Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. My name is Dannii Cohen. This week's guest is Ann Morrison. Ann Morrison debuted on Broadway as Mary Flynn in the original production of Merrily We Roll Along. In our interview, Ann recounts her memories of creating the show and working with Stephen Sondheim and Hal Prince, as well as her decades-long friendship with both of them. During her career, Ann was part of the original productions of Goblin Market, Peg, and LoveMusic. She also appeared in Anyone Can Whistle and Sunset Boulevard, among many, many other roles. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. I'm well. How are you?
Very good. I'm glad I had that struggle to get on because the garbage truck just went by and you wouldn't have heard me speak.
I just had to close the windows as well because there was so much noise outside suddenly.
All right, so 10 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock your time is a noisy time. We just now know that.
Yeah.
So it's so good to see you.
It's wonderful to meet you. I'm so glad you could come on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me all about the show. Or actually, you want to talk to me.
Yes.
Okay, you probably want to know about me. No, go ahead.
Well, the show is all about musical theater and the history and especially the artists and performers and their memories and everything else that's connected to theater.
Right. Well, I got lots of that in my head, so. Yeah, I was my first Broadway production was Merrily We Roll Along in 1981, and I was the original Mary Flynn. Um, and it was probably the most amazing experience ever. If you ever get a chance to work at the very beginning of a show, it's amazing. It's funny. I was just talking to a young woman who was about ready to play the role of Mary Flynn, and I get that all the time. People want to hear what my thoughts are about it, and I'm very open about it. And I also have this thing called the Mary Flynn Club, where I invite anyone I know that is a Mary Flynn, I invite them to the club. So I was inviting her, but she was very ill-informed. She didn't know even, she had no idea that, I mean, Stephen Sondheim was in the room with you? I said, yeah, in the beginning of a show. It's not like community theater where you just get the script and off you go. No, you're working with these musical theater gods right from the very beginning, and it's a thrill. It was exhausting too. Our particular show, if you know any of the history of Merrily,
Yeah.
supposed to open for 2 weeks. After a 2 week preview, and we ended up doing a 6 week preview, and then we only lasted for about 2 weeks. But that 6 weeks of previews was the most amazing musical theater experience I ever had. I would say it's a master class in how to put a musical theater on. Um, in fact, I have a one-woman show called Merrily from Center Stage, which is really about all the experience of that 6 weeks. And and of course, I sing the entire score of Merrily from 1981, so it's fun. But yeah, it's an amazing experience. Both Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim became mentors and good friends over the years. Um, it was I got to sing at Sondheim's birthday parties and then Hal Prince's memorial, which was quite an amazing experience. Um, but yeah, it was wow. I just I can't even though it didn't last, it'll be something that impact me the rest of my life. I think it made me a better performer, it made me a better director, it made me a better writer. Just having that intense experience of trying desperately to make a show work. And it's glorious. I left. I went another Broadway thing that I did was Sondheim. It was called Children in Art. It was a special celebration of Steve, and then that was when I got to see Hal Prince after all these years. He was introducing us, and he said, "Annie, where have you been?" I said, "Well, I've been doing theater. I just not been in New York. I didn't want to limit myself to just New York. I wanted to really explore all aspects of theater." And so he said, "Well, I'd love to get you back on Broadway again." I said, "Well, I'm not going to sit around in New York for that to happen. You're just going to have to let me know." So 2 weeks later, he called me up and I said, I want you to come to New York and do LoveMusic, which is about Kurt Weill and Lottie Lenya's relationship. And Alfred Urey wrote the book. Of course, we were doing Kurt Weill's music. So I did all the workshops. It was supposed to be Lottie Lenya. I had a great pleasure of coming up to his office. He said he just wanted me to, read through the script. But yeah, it was like an audition, with a musical director and Alfred Urey there. But he said, gosh, you sound just like her. So I did the backers auditions and I did the workshops. And then the new producers came in and said, no, we really don't think anyone knows who Lottie Lenya is anymore. We need someone with a Tony Award. So Donna Murphy did it. And I stayed with the show and I got to be her understudy. And that was a magnificent experience because if you know Donna will eventually, something will happen and she misses the show. And I got to go on. And I knew it already. In fact, it was interesting because they, I don't know how it's done in London. It might be done very much the same way. But understudies don't get any stage time until you go into previews. And so I already knew the show. But I hadn't walked the set. So I got to walk the set for Act 1 and going through the music. When a few days after that, I got a call between matinee and evening saying, you need to come to the theater right away. Donna can't sing tonight. And the crew said, she can't do it tonight. She hasn't walked the second act. And that's where all the dangerous stuff is. We can't go on knowing that she hasn't walked that set. So we postponed it and then made that a rehearsal, which was fine because the woman who would replace me was also the swing and another actor was already out. So they had to refigure out how to do a dance with two of the dancers out when it was a three character dance. They had to figure out another way to figure. It was interesting. So needless to say, I had a ball. I'm running around, making sure that my understudy was okay. It's just, you're okay. And then I got to go on. And years later, because I always have coffee at Hal Prince's office when I come back into the city, because I don't live in New York. I'm living in Florida right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm living in Florida right now. But I just keep going. When their job comes up, I go up. And I was sitting in his office, and we were talking about that experience. And he said something that was really important, because we were talking about how she heard her voice that night, Donna. And he said, well, because she screamed. She screamed in a very bad way. And she always is limping on a tender throat anyway. And he said, Annie, it wasn't her scene. It wasn't her scene. She was trying to take the scene. And that really hit me as a director. Or just, acting. Is that not every scene is your scene and you have to be willing to give it. So that was a wonderful statement. But I had a ball. I love Donna. She's a good girlfriend. But we got there again. It was another ill-fated show in the sense that it didn't work. And it broke Hal Prince's heart because he really wanted to do something small and simple and jewel-like. Every time I go to New York, I say, okay, Hal, I'm here. What Broadway show should I see? So, well, don't say anything on Broadway. You want to see good theater, right? Go see something off Broadway. It's so funny. Yeah, it's the best time. But Merrily was an amazing experience. And the thing about Merrily We Roll Along is it really built up these strong friendships. I mean, we are old friends after 43 years. I think we're the only Broadway show where everyone in the cast still contacts each other in this Merrily thread after 43 years. We find out about people's weddings and graduations and who has what baby, and sometimes we'll have reunions and we'll go see a show together. They tried to arrange for all of us to come and see the opening of Merrily, this last revival. Some of us couldn't make it as we were working, but we got to see it I got to be friends with Jonathan Groff, which has been lovely. He came to see my one-woman show because he had just got cast as Franklin Shepherd, and he wanted to see everything he could know about Merrily. And he happened to see in the paper, oh, there's a woman doing something about Merrily. And that's when we became fast friends. Yeah, it's been quite delightful. Have any questions? Because I'll just keep talking and talking.
Well, it's Merrily We Roll Along. How involved was Stephen Sondheim? Because you already hear he's so involved in his shows. What was he like working with?
Well, it's in my show, but I'll tell you. I auditioned for Hal Prince first. They had not found their Mary Flynn. Everybody else had been cast, but they hadn't had Mary Flynn. There probably was a smaller role too that came in a little bit later too, but they didn't have their Mary Flynn. And I was off doing a regional show called Keystone with an American actor by the name of Scott Bakula, who's since gone off to do some amazing television shows and films. And just was back in New York recently with a show called The Connector that Daisy Prince, Hal Prince's daughter, directed. It was a Jason Robert Brown show. So if you can snare that recording, it's an amazingly beautiful show. Oh, powerful. Anyway, the producers of that show said, I think we have your Mary Flynn. So Joanna Merlin, who was the casting director, they flew me down to audition for her. And she said, I think Hal Prince needs to see you. She said, how old are you? And I was just turned 25, so I knew I couldn't be in it because he had to be between the ages of 16 and 20. Which is ridiculous because most of us all had to lie about our ages. We were all like, what, 23, 25, you know. And a lot of Daisy Prince was 16 and she was in the show. And Abby Pogrebin was also 16, but they were about 17, 19, but the rest of us were all in our 20s. So I got to audition for Hal Prince, and it was on the set of Evita because he had produced it and directed it. And that in those days, you could actually audition for Broadway shows on Broadway stages. And Evita at that time had a very high rake. It's been regulated since then because people were having accidents with the dancers were. And I didn't know any better. I came out in heels, so I wasn't so terrified that I was auditioning for Hal Prince. I was terrified I was going to fall into the pit. But he was with Ruthie Mitchell, his assistant, and he throws his glasses on top of his head, as Hal Prince will, and ran up the aisle and said, Ruthie, that's what I'm talking about. And can you come back in 2 weeks because Steve's in Mallorca? And so I did come back on the set of Evita 2 weeks later, and it was my birthday. And the other one out there was Stephen Sondheim, and he was just delightful. Talk about being scared. I mean, I grew up on Stephen Sondheim and Leonard Bernstein, you know. So there he was, and he was delightful. He laughed at things that I said. He asked all kinds of questions. He was writing things down. He asked how high did I sing. I sang a high C because I couldn't those days. He said, terrific, because I still have one more song to write for Mary Flynn. I said, oh, that's nice. He said, all right, see you first day of rehearsal, and he leaves. And so I'm walking down the street, and I thought, did I just get a Broadway show for my birthday? Stephen Sondheim's writing me a song. And it turned out he hadn't finished the song. Now you know, life is grimy, well, now you know. Okay, big surprise, people love you and tell you lies. Okay, that hadn't been written yet. So I said, well, he wrote a song for the show. But a lot of people say, well, actually, he did write it for you. Because he, all during that time, was watching your delivery, your sense of humor, and seeing how Mary and Annie kind of fit together. And so the song was really created for you. So he was delightful. He was like a kid himself. You'll hear it in some of his writings. He says that Merrily was probably the most fun he ever had putting a show together. And he dressed like a kid himself. I remember sitting next to him on the piano, first day of rehearsal, to figure out the keys for the show, my keys. And I had this idea that since the show goes backwards in time, and Mary's 42 at the beginning when we meet her. Well, our version's a little bit different because we had a truncated, a bookended piece of Behold the Hills of Tomorrow, because it was a graduation, and that's since not in the show anymore. It's too bad because it's a wonderful number. It's a wonderful way to set up the show. But Mary Flynn is 42 years old, and I thought, well, gee, you know, she's an alcoholic, and she probably smokes cigarettes. So the beginning of the show, I should be an alto, and as the show goes backwards in time, I should sing higher and higher. And I always have to apologize to all the Mary Flynns out there because it's not, at the end, you wanted to go the other way around, but after doing 8 performances a week, you don't want to be singing higher and higher and higher. And Steve likes to write in the men's keys. He favors the men's keys. And any woman who sings any of the songs from the show, they go, what was he thinking when he was putting all the trios together? You know, it's all favored for the men. So yeah, you're finding yourself singing, and all of a sudden you have to drop down an octave lower, and then you go back up again. But oh God, I love Steve. He was so sharp. I tell often in my show that there was a time where he came around the corner. I'm dyslexic, and I was just sure I was going to get fired. They were going to find out, and they were going to fire me. And he came around the corner of a flat one day, and he said, don't forget the and in that sentence. And oh God, I'm busted. I'm in so much trouble. And I said, I bet you know all the words of this script, being a little smart ass. And he said, yep. He was fun. Yeah, he was quite something. He really enjoyed being there, you could tell. So he was absolutely heartbroken when Merrily didn't run. Um, and it destroyed their relationship, Hal and Steve, for a while. They had to go their separate ways, which was sad. But a good 21 years later, we did a reunion concert. All the originals came back, except for one cast member, and in fact, you can see that on YouTube. That I think someone finally put up the reunion concert. And now I'm, instead of being in a T-shirt with my name on it, Mary Flynn or Best Pal, which I got to be known as, because Hal decided to cut all the costumes that were so beautiful, but he thought he wanted something a little more kid-like. And so he put us in T-shirts with our names and character and our relationship to Franklin Shepard. So I was Best Pal. And so, but now, 21 years later, I'm in a felt black evening gown, where 21 years before I was in a dumpy sweatshirt. It was a very healing experience. If you can see it, you'll enjoy it. We didn't do the book. That was a shame because I think that really dissolved the relationship between George Firth, the book writer, and Steve was on that reunion concert because kept on doing so many rewrites to the show. La Jolla's production of it was the first major change in Merrily. Up until then, colleges could still do our 81 version, but that was it. And so he insisted that if we were going to do it, we had to do the script that he had now. And Steve said, "No, George, the purpose of the reunion is to hear the original." And he said, "Well, then, no, if you're not going to do my script now, then you can't do any of the words at all." So we ended up just doing the music, except for a couple things Steve would say, "Go ahead and say that line because it's on the album." And I don't think they were friends after that. But that was a shame on George because he really took himself out of a healing experience. We all went through a massive healing, George and Hal and everyone involved with it, because our original stage manager was there, Beverly Randolph was there, and we had a 25-piece orchestra again, which you haven't seen or heard since. When you get into that overture of Merrily, I'm going to start crying. It's so thrilling. And every night, even when we were closing, we'd get to da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da, old friends, and the audience would start applauding. I mean, even from the beginning, as if they were expecting the curtain to open up on a hit show. It just was that amazing Jonathan Tunick, who was the arranger, just is such a brilliant. He understands Steve so well. It's magnificent. So in the reunion concert, there was that 25-piece orchestra, and Paul Gimignani, who was our conductor there. And before we came out on the concert, he turned to all of us and he said, "Don't ever forget how much you're loved. You're going to hear a lot of love out there." And we did. The minute we came on stage, 21 years before, people were walking up the aisle, during the show. 21 years later, they're screaming on their feet like they're at a rock concert. So it was a massive, beautiful. And then I got to watch Hal and Steve hug each other on stage and announce the next project they were going to do together. I mean, that was amazing. And then I got to do the Becker's audition for that and the workshop for, at that time it was called Gold, before it became Bounce and became, kept growing itself. But no, it was just, that was, and George took himself out of that healing. It's a shame. Ron Field had already died, who was our original choreographer. In my one woman show, I talk about the tragedy of George, of Ron Field. I haven't had enough coffee. He became very mean during the show, and he just couldn't seem to communicate with Hal what Hal wanted, and Hal couldn't communicate back. And there was kind of a quit/firing experience with Ron, and he brought in Larry Fuller, who he had done many shows. Hal did many shows with him. He'd also did Evita. And Larry was kind and very understanding, and he took the time to get to know each and every one of us and how we played our roles and how we moved, because we weren't top-notch dancers. That was what Hal wanted. So I don't know. We did pretty damn well. If you see some of those videos, we were doing okay. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And so you have to understand that every night was a different show for 6 weeks. Every night was a different show. We had cheat sheets everywhere. We go into rehearsal for 5 hours, and then we would do that show that evening, knowing that you don't have to you didn't have to worry that it might change again. So maybe that line was going to stay in, maybe a change, and you're in rehearsal for another 5 hours, and you do that show at night. And then it got to be so, we wanted so much to work that we gave up our days off. So now we were always in rehearsal. And I have a permanent cyst in my vocal cord from the show. Partly too because I was allergic to the drying agent they put on the music before they would take it into rehearsal. They were cranking out the music so quickly, making changes, that in those days they put this drying agent on it so they could rush it over to the rehearsal on a bicycle or whatever it was those days. And I was allergic to it, so my vocal cords dried up. So I had first 2 weeks was very difficult. So I think that's when I started the cyst. And then just always having to sing. Good old Liz Calloway. Do you know who she is? She's a cabaret concert performer now. She did a lot of Broadway shows. She's been voiceover actress. She was my understudy. And good old Liz would sit in the front row and a lot of those rehearsals to sing those songs for me so I could just get through it so I could do the show at night. God bless her. We had, it was just amazing. So as tired as we were, I finally almost had my own nervous breakdown. Something went terribly wrong in opening doors. My typewriter table had wheels. Larry Fuller decided to change the choreography. And now instead of being on this huge revolve, we were now leaving the revolve and coming back on and leaving the revolve and coming back on. But by then the revolve had a lip on it. And my wheels hit the lip of that and wiped out. And the wheels locked, typewriter broke in half, papers and cigarette butts were all over the stage. Lonnie, and if you know now, you know. How's it going? Good. You fine? Well, when it please. Whatever. Not Glenn. I got another job with open doors, singing. Look here. So you can't. It's like a patter song with 3 people and then 4 people with this vaudeville turn in the middle. And you can't do. If you go off, you can derail. In fact, Jonathan Groff laughs about it because he did go off one night and they completely derailed the song. They all just laughed. What could they do? But no, it was devastating. And so Lonnie's we're still singing, trying to do the show, but he's picking up the typewriter and putting it on, and then I have to go into a freeze with my cigarette. I was devastated. I knew that Steve was in the wings. He was going to say it was terrific because he'd always, try and make you feel good. And it was horrible. And I had friends in the audience, and I just felt like the biggest ass on Broadway. But the next day, Hal Prince came into my dressing room, and he apologized. He said, I don't know what it's like to memorize lines. You kids, you just say yes to everything. And then he told me the famous story about Ethel Merman. She had enough of all this rehearsals. She said, call me Miss Birdseye. This show is frozen. I laughed so hard. And he said, I just need to know when you guys are Birdseye. So we continued. That was like on November 2nd. And we opened finally on November 16th. But the changes weren't so bad after that. And every time something would come in, Hal would look at me and go, is that okay? Yeah, Hal, it's okay. So we really thought by the time we opened that we were going to be okay, and the reviews weren't good. Some reviews are okay, but a lot of them weren't. That was in the days when the New York Times could kill a show, and it did. And so for years and years and years, we were considered the flop, Sondheim's flop, and it was very hurtful. And it wasn't until we did the reunion concert that Hal Prince said, oh my God, it always was the book. Because the book wasn't there. It always was the book. And it still is. It's still a flawed show as far as I'm concerned. But we won't get into that. But it became a big success. Steve finally, of course, he's dead, but the show recouped quite a bit. And they now are great friends, That's the curse of Merrily. You'll be friends forever. You'll be friends forever. In fact, you can see back here, that's Lonnie. I don't know if you can see it very well. I'm not helping. That's Jim Walton and myself and Lonnie Price in Old Friends. It was one of the cars that were outside of the theater.
Lovely picture.
Yeah. You can see it online. It's very famous. Yeah, that was amazing. I went off and I kept working. In fact, I was the only one who got an award for the show. I got the Theater World Award. So that was nice. We just had an amazing experience. And I continued working. I did another show off Broadway called Goblin Market. Polly Penn music and
Yes,
picking
to find
harmony.
out about that show and researching your work because it isn't known here, but it's when I heard it, it's such a lovely score and seems like a lovely play.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Goblin Market? Oh, Goblin Market's
Yes.
beautiful. I'm surprised it isn't done in England all the time. It's a little art chamber music is what it is, just two characters. And then of course I was in London. I starred in a West End musical called Peg, based on the play Peg in My Heart. Um, got to work with Sean Phillips and some amazing people. Um,
Was it different working in the UK versus America?
oh, I loved it. If I could go back there and work all the time, I would. Um, at that time, that would have been in 1984. Um, they were kind of looking up to American musical theater actors on a pedestal. Like, oh no, you guys are fine. And I didn't think I could do Shakespeare. And all my great actor friends over there said, "Oh, you silly goose! You do musicals. You know, if you can do a musical, you can do Shakespeare." And I went, "Oh, okay." So off I did it. Oh yeah, I get it. I get it now. Prose verse, prose verse, prose verse. I get it. Okay, I understand this. Thank you, Shakespeare. But then I went out to Los Angeles. I was auditioning for things in New York that I was noticing were going to people with television credits. And that was in the 80s. And I thought, I see where this is going. Pretty soon, to make a show, you're going to have to be on television. So I went out to Los Angeles and I just hated the experience. I didn't like television at all. Um, didn't do an awful lot of it, but because I was known as this musical theater actress, so I was always doing these waiver shows. But that wasn't why I went to LA. I discovered all kinds of amazing things. I got involved with the National Dyslexia Research Foundation, and I thought I wanted to start a musical theater program for maybe learning different children. Then I met a casting director out there who laughed, and she said, "You know, Annie, half the business is dyslexic." Duh. I went, "Oh, okay." She's always just let a director know that you need a script ahead of time. It's no big deal. I went, "Okay." So I came to Sarasota, Florida, because I put my parents up here to retire, and my husband and I were splitting up, and I had our son Huckleberry Walton, Huck Walton, and I didn't want to go back to New York right away, so I came to Florida for a little bit, and Blake and I could figure out how we were going to do, if we were going to continue to be married or if we were going to break up, but still keep this friendship, which we really wanted because he's my soulmate. And in fact, you can hear him talking in the other room with the cat. So we still with each other. We're just not married. Um, and yeah, we have a theater company together called Sarasota Productions, which celebrates the solo artist. But when I came to Sarasota, I thought I would try and see if I can create a musical theater program to help. And I ended up working at the Oslo Repertory Theater and got them all excited about that idea. But we got hooked up with a human resource organization that worked with persons with developmental disabilities. So now I'm working with persons with Down syndrome and cerebral palsy and autism and mental delay and all kinds of interesting things. And over the summer, and help them be in the same play. It was the most magnificent experience. There's a little bit of that in Lonnie Price's Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened documentary. The only thing about that documentary is that everybody thought I quit the business and working with persons with disabilities. No, I'm still working as an actor. I, I think that's probably why I did my one-woman shows. No, I'm still working. I mean, I don't even work with those people anymore. They've grown and gone on. But yeah, I now have Sarasota Productions, which helps people develop solo theater, which is my other huge love. I even have of course, Merrily from Center Stage is a solo musical. So I love it. I love it. Yeah. So when LoveMusic closed, I remember telling the universe, I don't know if you believe in this, but I do. I told the universe when Merrily closed, I said, well, I think I might want to do another Broadway show, maybe, but it would have to be completely different experience. I don't want to be the lead in a show with the weight on my shoulders like that. I need a different experience. So forgot I said that. So here I was going to star in LoveMusic. And then I didn't. I ended up being understudied, but still going on. I got to be the hero of the show and had this amazing experience of relationships. And when that show closed, I went, oh, you gave me another Broadway show where I didn't have to be the lead. I get it. Okay. All right. Universe, now that you're listening, I want another Broadway show, but this time I just want to come in one scene. It's got to be hilariously funny. I get one number, and that's it. Yeah. So let's see if it's listening.
How did your love for music and theater start?
Well, my parents actually. My parents were college professors. My father was a music professor, and my mother taught modern dance, movement in the theater. She was a true Renaissance woman. She was a modern dancer. She was a choreographer. She was a playwright. She was a poet. She was a director. She designed hats. She designed plates. She wrote poetry. She wrote lyrics. My father and mother collaborated. They wrote 3 ballets, 1 opera, 3 musicals, and art songs, and other comedy things. So I thought that was normal. Doesn't everybody's parents do that? so, on the college level, I was dragged in as a kid. They needed a balloon girl in Carnival, and I was the balloon girl, and that's when the bug bit. I'd already been listening to albums in the living room. I put on an album because we had just tons of musical theater. And I'd spend all day just mimicking it and choreographing it and staging the musical. So when I see the musical, well, I don't know. I wouldn't have directed it that way. 5-year-old. So yeah, I got totally involved in theater because of my parents. And then they started a summer stop program up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, because they moved from college to college. They were at George Williams College in the Chicago area. And up in Lake Geneva in Wisconsin, they had a summer campus. And my dad was then head of the music series up there. But they decided to start this little, stock. Goodman students from New York who had nothing to do in the summer would come up and work there. And that was probably the best training I ever had, was to be able to do all those different kinds of shows. And then a cabaret. So we were all summer long, we were just constantly working. And that's probably why I had the stamina to do Merrily with all those changes going in. And that never occurred to me. It's probably where I got my training for that. But that was just jolly fun. So when I got, and I happened to go to a high school that wasn't a performing arts high school like they have them now, but it was. They just didn't call it that in those days. I mean, I was drafting sets, I was designing costumes. It was a wonderful theater program. And I got a scholarship to go off to college. Now, I went off to the Boston Conservatory of Music. Now, this was in 1974, and they didn't have musical theater programs yet, at least not in the States. So you would learn dance, and you would learn your music, and you would do your acting, and then when they wanted to do a musical, you just brought it all together. So they were just starting to do musical theater programs. And I didn't feel challenged. I really wanted to be a little fish in a big pond, because I've been a big fish in a little pond. I really wanted to be stretched. So I called my dad and I said, I think I don't belong here, Dad. And he said, well, are you going to college because your parents are college professors? Because that's a stupid reason. Don't go. Okay. I tell that to people now, and they're horrified, because now you're supposed to go to college if you want a career. But my dad was a generation that you only went to college if you wanted to better yourself. Not everybody went to college. And I left, and I was seeking where I wanted to go to study, and I ended up at the Herbert Berghoff Studios in New York, and working with people like Uta Hagen and Charles Nelson Riley and Rita Gardner. And it was great, because I was in class with people who were actually doing it. So I got to be a little fish in a big pond, and really had to push, really had to learn, and it was glorious. And then I ended up leaving because I spent 2 years on the road singing with a Korean family in nightclubs. I had fallen in love with the second eldest son, and they had to go out on the road because their father could no longer perform. He had some physical problems with his singing and couldn't play an instrument. And they knew I spoke English pretty well. So I went on the road with them. And that was an amazing training, because I learned how to break the fourth wall with great ease and comfort, talk directly to an audience. I just learned, I learned that as long as you don't know you can't do something, you can do anything. Because they said, it'd be fun, this trio that the 3 women are doing. Why don't we give you instruments? So they gave me a valve trombone so I could dance with it. And they said, these are the pitches you blow, and these are the valves you push, practice, and we'll go on tonight. I went, okay, I did it. I can only play Sat and Dial and a couple of the numbers. I don't know how to play anything else, but it was a great lesson to learn. As long as you don't know you can't do something, you can do anything. Um, yeah, that was glorious. And then I ended up at the Burt Reynolds Jupiter's theater's training program the very first year. Um, and that was great because if I did a 52-week apprenticeship program, I could earn my union card. Or you could do 5 equity shows, and they happened. I did both. But just before that, because the theater wasn't ready yet, they hadn't quite finished building it, I went over to the Oslo in Sarasota, Florida, and did a year of touring with children's theater. Amazing, amazing company. All over the South East, and it's quite fun. Then I went over to do that, and that was great training. That whole because when you're an apprentice, you're a slave. You're a slave to the theater. But Burt Reynolds had brought in TV stars and film stars and theater stars to work there, and so I got to really observe some amazing performers. Martin Sheen, the movie actor, loves theater, but he's a method actor. And method in the way that method was back then, method now is a little bit different. I hear that from film actors in Hollywood, but so he was doing a 2-character piece with Julie Kavner in the United States. You probably know her as the voice of Marge Simpson.
Oh, yes.
But she's a wonderful actress, and
Yes.
so I'd watch the two of them. He'd come out of his dressing room and he'd have to do 100 push-ups to assimilate the feeling of going up 5 flights of stairs to go into the apartment. Julie Kavner would come out of her dressing room. She'd pick up the purse off the prop table. She'd go to the door, turn around, look at me and say, "Don't forget there's a party at my house tonight," and go in, and they'd be in the same play. I love that. I think why I had a hard time in Los Angeles is that any of the TV stars that came down, they hadn't had any theater in their background. They were just unbelievable spoiled brats. And I thought, I don't like these people. They didn't know how to put on makeup. They didn't do anything. Everything had to be done for them. Oh. But any film stars that came down, well, couldn't wait to because they loved the theater. And so you got to get their chops back up again, and they were delightful. So I thought, yeah, I think the path for me is live theater. I mean, I'll do a film every once in a while, but it's not as fun. It's boring. You have no control,
Yeah.
It's not your media.
I
Well,
can often notice when you're watching a movie or a TV show when an artist has done theater or not, there's a difference in the acting that sometimes often feels stronger, more
absolutely.
passion behind it.
Yep, absolutely. You can tell. You can really tell. I think a lot of Americans love Brit actors to come over and do film because of their work ethic is different. I mean, they will actually take the time to get a dialect coach because it's part of their training. And a lot of lazy American actors who don't do that. I'll just wing it. And then you go, yeah, you sound like, Wisconsin. I'm sorry. So it's been fun. But yeah, the last time it was 2 years ago. I was in London working at Crazy Cox with my one-woman show. And I want to come back. I really love London. I love the theater. It's great. I have the National Theater live on my TV because I have to see good theater. So I'm spoiled. So it's been fun. But yeah, right now I'm getting ready to get that show back up again. But we're coaching people putting their shows together, and it's glorious. We also Blake and I go into the high school here, Performing Arts High School. It's now part of the curriculum, solo theater development, and we spend all fall with them. And then in January, they get a chance to do about a 10-minute presentation of what would be a larger show. And it's so fun to watch. They will break it up into 2 nights, got the class, and you see the first class go up that night, and they're different. They come back to cheer on the folk in the second night, and they're all so mature. There's something about being on stage by yourself and telling your truth, because we try to get them to do more autobiographical stuff first. Then if they want to put it in another voice, they can do that, but it's got to come from them first. And some of the teachers will come and bawl as I had no idea that student was going through that. All right, now I know the student, you know. So yeah, it's part of their curriculum. We might spring off into other places. I went up to Minneapolis to do my one-woman show, and then I do a master class on getting your feet wet in solo theater. And again, this summer, I did a good 10-day workshop on getting your feet wet. So, so I need to come to England and get your feet wet. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys got it down fine.
I want to know also that Anyone Can Whistle from Sondheim. Is that how was that like for you?
Well, that was we did the West Coast premiere in these States. So I was out in California. I had never been done there. Um, and that's a difficult show because Arthur Lawrence will not allow you to change his script. And that's a good example of a flawed show because of the book. So we just couldn't, you had to be careful. We couldn't do too many cuts, couldn't do anything. Although Steve got involved. There was a cut song from the show called "There's Always a Woman to Spoil the Illusion." The rotten banana to ruin the bunch. You know, that was cut from the show. I think if you do Anyone Can Whistle now, they put it back in there. But he gave us permission to do it. It was really fun. So I was the first person to ever sing that song. Well, of course, I'm sure they must have done it in rehearsals when they originally did it. But yeah, it was a fun experience. Yeah, it was the West Coast. We didn't bring it back to the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's great music in it, but the book is a bit of a problem.
So a lot of people say that a lot of the issues in the show are now more relevant because they feel like today in some way.
Yep, absolutely. The loonies, which they call the cookies,
Yes.
my neighbors. It's the politics in the United States, and I'm sure it's the politics in England too. I mean, yeah. We just found out that our president. If you play this, this will date this interview. You can cut this if you want to. But we found out yesterday our president decided to resign. Not resign. He's going to continue, but he's not going to continue running. So Kamala Harris is going to take over, and it's just the ripple effect across the United States is so much fun. Throw everybody in a tizzy. It's great. I'm loving it. So the joke around here is that we'll know where our future is after November 5th if we're moving to Ireland or not. We may have to get out of here. Who knows? I keep my spirits up. Yeah. I decided my good old Blake came in one day and he said, "I'm so tired of everybody's drama, Annie. Oh, I'm just so tired of everybody's drama." I said, "I hear you. How about you and I make a pact? We're going to live in a comedy." He said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we can live in a comedy. I mean, in a comedy, tragic things happen, but we know the protagonist, what's going to happen to the protagonist at the end, and we'll all laugh, we'll all dance at Ermengarde's wedding at the end of our life, and the horse will laugh, and everything will be fine." What we discovered is, with that attitude, we're better listeners to people. I have more compassion. Not that it was never compassionate before, but I think I can hear people differently because they're maybe doing King Lear, but I'm doing Hello Dolly. And I can hear them better, and they can advise better if they really want to know anything. So yeah, my advice to you is to try and think in terms of living in a comedy, and you'll get through life much better.
We also did Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard, yeah. There's a wonderful theater here in Wichita, Kansas, of all places. It's Music Theater of Wichita, which their production values are like that of Broadway. It's just amazing. And it's a summer stock experience. So again, you rehearse for a week and you're up for a week, you know, and then they move on to the next thing. So they have a core group of a company that have to learn all 5 shows, and then they bring us in to do whatever show it is. So I was called up and asked, "Hey, you want to do Sunset Boulevard?" I said, "Okay, sure." Now, I had never seen a production of Sunset Boulevard, nor did I want to go and research what anyone else did with it. We decided we wanted to make it fresh for ourselves. We wanted to have our own experience of developing it for the first time, feeling. So my research was, I spent hours looking at silent films comedies and dramas, and what were they doing in France and what were they doing in England, and what was the oldest silent picture, because I figured Norma Desmond would be a combination of those stars. I didn't want to do Norma Desmond. I mean, I didn't want to do Gloria Swanson, because Gloria Swanson wasn't doing Gloria Swanson. Well, she went away. She was probably making fun of herself, but she was. Every little gesture that I made was a tip to this silent picture star, or that particular silent picture star, or I kind of made her a combination of all the things that I was learning, um, and that was a lot of fun. I had a great time with that show. Um, I'm, I they haven't done much of Andrew Lloyd Webber, but that one I did, and I had a good time. I think you can probably hear me sing that on YouTube too.
So do you still have a dream role?
Everybody asks that, and I never know how to answer that.
Or
Because I
something
like,
you want to
well,
wish would be created?
see, there's the correct answer. What I would wish to be created. Um, well, it would have to be comedy. It could be dramatic, but I got some couple of, oh, here, this will help you a lot in understanding how I'm going to answer this question. My son, when he was little, said, "Mom, do you ever see your life as a movie?" I said, "Yeah, I think I do." He said, "Are you the star of the movie?" I said, "No." He said, "Wait, you're not the star of your own movie?" I said, "No." I said, "I'm the second woman. She has all the best lines." So that's how I live my life. I'm not the star of my movie. I think it's good advice for me, at least. Um, so, so I don't have to be the star of the show. If it's created, it's got to be just a very fun character part, um, that has wisdom to it, a sense of humor, um, and there could be I mean, I'm a good dramatic actress. Don't get you wrong, um, but if the goal is to have the people go out of the theater feeling good about themselves, that's what I want. I want to be a part of you getting out of your theater seat and feeling good about yourself. I think that's why I loved Merrily. Is people always thought it was a tragic ending. I said, "You kidding?" No, we get to see what could be. All we're doing is watching Franklin Shepard experience looking at this life backwards and seeing what roads he took. He could have taken a different road, but he took that road. That's all. You can call that a tragedy, or you can just it's a wonderful thing. But it's the reminder is that you always go back to your friendships. And the thing is, for me, Merrily was not about um, the selling out in the business. We do, we can do Broadway shows and we can do films. And that's ridiculous. There's nothing to do with that. It's about the tragedy of losing your friends. But we do. We grow apart. That's just what happens. But if you can go back and remember those sweet spots when it was all so dear and life was hopeful. So to me, that's a happy ending. It's to remind us to do that. So I choose to live my life backwards, which is why everybody says you look so young, Annie. I learned to live my life backwards.
What are some of your favorite stage memories?
Besides Merrily,
Yes, or
tons,
in Merrily.
tons of them. I think there's a show that always pops in my head right away. Moments of Goblin Market were just jewels. It was working with Terry Klausner. She had been, when I knew her, she had been the understudy for Evita. And she had such funny stories to tell me about what that whole experience was like. I said, "Yeah, well, I auditioned on your stage." So, um, and she was a delight. She's still a good old girlfriend. Um, but there was a show called Noel and Gertie about Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence. It's a two-character piece, and I loved it. Our particular director really made it theatrical. A lot of times it's done like a review with just stools. No, we had a set, and we'd move up into the bridge, and we'd make costume changes, and um, I really felt like I was in the skin of Gertrude Lawrence, and the other actor, Barney Fitzgerald, was so Noel Coward. It was a delight. It was so popular that theaters kept asking us to come and do our production. That was lovely. Um, Gosh, my dream. I think every show that I do, there's a sweet spot. Oh well, I'll tell you a show that I got to do again. It's Linda Lovely Goes to Broadway. I wrote it. It's about a woman with Down syndrome who was going into Alzheimer's. She was my hardest working actress friend that I ever had. And when I was off working with persons with developmental disabilities, I got to meet this Linda. Linda Lovely was her stage name. And she always wanted to do Laurie in Oklahoma. So I gave her that opportunity that one summer to be Oklahoma. They had 3 weeks to put it together, and it was absurdist theater. It was Eugene Ionesco meets Rodgers and Hammerstein. And I showed it to the Rodgers and Hammerstein organization because I knew the people in it. They said, Annie, you have permission to do any Rodgers and Hammerstein musical the rest of your life. They get it on their weird way, you know. So she got to be, she taught me the choreography for, you know, out of my dreams and into, you know, she had this little gestures because she had a sore hip, couldn't walk very well, but she choreographed it, you know. And God, she was the best. But she wanted to write a musical. And I don't know how to write a musical, but I learned if I just stay out of her way and just ask questions. And now I know how to write because I was helping her write a musical. I'd ask her a question and she'd answer it, and I'd write that down and never corrected anything she wrote. She had a charming little 10-minute musical called Take a Bite, with parentheses, oh, applesauce, because her mother said, oh, applesauce is something. She said, oh, let's put that in the show. Let's put that in the show. So I was off doing, we got a chance, she had professional actors do her piece. She got to sit on the stage and watch these professional actors do the show. It was just delightful. Oh, I just looked at the time, I may have to leave in a little bit. But so I was up doing LoveMusic, and my friend Judy Blazer was in the show with me. Tommy Tune, famous Tommy Tune, had come back and he was talking to us. And she was telling Tommy all about this wonderful company that I had. And was telling a little bit about it, and that she said, you know, Annie, we should probably do Linda's musical up here with Broadway actors. You know, we could help do a fundraiser. And Tommy Tune said, well, I'll direct it. And I said, well, Tommy, if you direct it, you have to be sure to do specific hand gestures and dance movements that Linda insists are always in the show. And that was the idea for my solo show. So it's called Linda Lovely Goes to Broadway. It's a fictitious story about a road trip with her and her family in the car, going up to New York to watch this rehearsal of something that never happened, but could happen. But it's very in these other worlds of places to go, and it's just it's the best writing I've ever done. It's really the best writing I've ever done. And I was getting ready to take it on tour when COVID happened. Mm-hmm. So I think when Merrily from Center Stage is finally up, we want to film it. Once it's filmed, then I want to push that aside and get back to Linda Lovely Goes to Broadway, because that's my favorite piece of theater, for sure.
Do you have a message for theater fans?
My message to theater fans is please keep going. Please go to live theater as much as you possibly can. I mean, we have this wonderful tool now where you can watch things online and what have you. But my son always had this idea that to help to save Broadway is they should do what musicians have done. They make concept albums so that their audience knows the musical, and they film it. So it becomes this film thing that people can afford to see. And then you would take it to Broadway, and then people would want to come and see it like a live concert, because then they would see everybody live. And I thought, that's brilliant. What a brilliant idea. But please go to live theater, because when you're on stage, there's nothing like that synergy that happens when you're on stage and the audience is here, and there's this imaginary thing, this magical thing that touches up above us all, where the audience and the performer connect. And it's spiritual. It's magic. It's just amazing. So keep going to the theater. Keep loving to go to the theater. Do theater. You'll be a better, I always say that theater is never a waste of time in school. You should take theater classes. That should be the mandatory class, not algebra. Because you will use theater everything you do. Algebra, only a few people use it, you know. But theater it's life-changing, you know. I wouldn't say, you know, people say, oh, I do theater for therapy. Well, you can do theater, you can do drama therapy if you want to. There is therapeutic things about theater, but it's also art. Don't forget it's an art form. Enjoy the art. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, my darling. Have a great time. And when I come to I'll look you up.
Have a wonderful day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.